My name is Commissioner Frank Avila, and I'm the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago. And the name of our show is Christmas, the answer to all of life's questions. And as my guest, I have Father Thomas J. Loya. He's pastor of the Annunciation of the Mother of God Byzantine Catholic Parish in Homer Glen, Illinois. Glad that you're on our show, Father.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Thank you. Yes. And you know, Christmas, the name of our show is Christmas, the answer to all of life's questions.
Yes.
It's a big question, and a lot of, it's one answer or several answers. Christmas comes once a year, and everyone throughout the whole world celebrates it in some way. Mm-hmm. And maybe we should explain to them the history of Christmas.
Well, first of all, when you talk about Christmas, we need to reframe that. It's not just a one-day event. It's not just about people getting together, sharing gifts. It's all good. It's okay. But it's much, much greater than that. Actually, Christmas is a constant reality. First of all, in the Bible, it was predicted by certain prophets, like, for instance, the prophet Micah. This is many centuries ago. He said, "But you, O Bethlehem, Ephratah, too small to be among the clans of Judah. From you shall come forth for me one who is to be ruler in Israel." Also, the prophet Isaiah says also in chapter 11, "But a shoot shall sprout from the stump of Jesse, and from his roots a bud shall blossom. The Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, a spirit of wisdom and of understanding, a spirit of counsel and of strength." There are a number of prophets that predicted that there would be the coming of somebody special, of a Messiah. But if we go even way before that, we have to reframe our idea, our whole concept of Christmas this way. Even our whole faith, there's one great mystery in life, one great mystery from which everything else comes. And that mystery is basically this, that a spirit, a God who is pure spirit, who is invisible, incomprehensible, ineffable, immeasurable, that God decided, for whatever reason, to bring into existence matter. In other words, physical things. First, he created spiritual beings, the angels in heaven, the dominations, principalities, all spiritual beings in heaven. Angels are a big feature during Christmas, but they were spiritual beings. At some point, God decided to bring into existence physicality, matter. And what he did was, he would infuse himself into that matter so that what was once invisible now becomes visible, precisely through this physicality. In other words, we can now touch God. We can come to know God much more intimately. We can actually commune, develop a relationship with God, especially in the sacraments of the church, strictly through and precisely through some physical order, something physical. So the invisible now becomes visible through the physical. And what that does is that gives us a vision of all of life. It means everything we see in life, everything created, especially by God, but also by man, but especially by God, everything created now points to, makes present, and participates in God. That means the world, especially the earth, the environment, nature, which comes to its fullness in the human person, all has a sacredness to it. It points to God. It makes an invisible reality visible. Now that will give us a vision of how then to see all of creation, especially the human person, and therefore how to interface with those things or those persons from that vision. So when we talk about Christmas, we're really talking about a great mystery revealed that thou provides us with a vision, a blueprint for reality. And yes, it came in the form of God who took on flesh What an incredible, incredible miracle. An infinite God becomes finite. He puts himself into a finite human body, even though he's infinite. He can't be contained by anything. And yet he contains himself in a body. First in the body of a virgin woman. And he takes on his own human male body while still remaining God. The creator becomes the creature while remaining the creator. I mean, it's an incomprehensible act of love. When in Christianity they began to observe the events from the Bible and the events of the life of Christ, around the 4th century in Rome is when a focus on the birth of Christ began to develop in the church's liturgical calendar. It started in Rome, then it spread to the Eastern churches. And this celebration is what we now call Christmas. But at that time, they also celebrated Christ's theophany, or his baptism. So basically, there was a celebration in the church early on of the incarnational dimension. By incarnation, we mean incarnate means in flesh. In other words, indivisible takes on flesh. So the church celebrated and observed this great mystery, this miracle of God taking on flesh, a spiritual being becoming physical while still remaining a physical being, a spiritual being. An incredible, incredible miracle. The great mystery from which everything else comes. See, we're already talking about something that goes far beyond just getting together, buying presents, having food. We should even use the word holiday. I don't even like the word Christmas that much. It should be bigger words that have richer meaning, like the incarnation. So if you're experiencing Christmas right now and you're alone perhaps, or you feel alone, I'm glad you're tuning in. Because my message is largely for you. It's for everybody, really. This may be the best Christmas of your life. Because Christmas is experienced in our heart and from there outward. It's not dependent on external realities. Whether you got the gifts or you have people, you're not lonely. You have people to get together with. That's all good. But that's kind of like the crumbs of the loaf of bread. I want to talk about the loaf of bread itself, not just the crumbs. Now, something that helps us to understand this is not only the Bibles I read, but also the art of the church, its music, its liturgy. I have an example of a piece of the art of the church. This is a reproduction of an icon. Now, it's an icon mural that I painted in my own church, which is Annunciation Byzantine Catholic Church, as you heard earlier, in Homer Glen, Illinois. This is actually a very large mural of the birth of Christ. But if you notice something, I have titles here. The largest title I have says, The Great Mystery. Then underneath that, I have other titles. The Incarnation, the Divine Condescension, the Kenosis, the Self-Emptying, and finally the Nativity of our Lord, or Birth of Christ, or you want to call it Christmas. But I put that down on the bottom of the list because what this is really all about, and what this icon is depicting, what we call Christmas, is really about these things. This great mystery, this divine condescension. Condescension means God lowered himself. Imagine, would you or I lower ourselves? We don't like to get lowered. We don't like to get insulted or offended. Would we lower ourselves? For instance, would you lower yourself to become a worm if you knew that the worm species was in trouble? Would you become a worm to save it? It's unthinkable. Well, imagine that times infinity. God, who is so above us, so perfect, lowers himself to become one of us because he loved us that much and wanted to unite with us. And he did it going all the way from being a human being in the form of a baby, starting out as a baby. Christmas isn't about a baby in a manger. That's part of it. These things are all part of it. He starts out as a baby because he was going to be fully human in every way except sin. So he starts out as a baby, but that's not the point of Christmas. It's a beautiful aspect of it, but it's a starting point. Then we have this word kenosis, self-emptying. Notice he empties himself out onto us. He pours himself out onto us. In fact, one way to understand the real Christmas and to make it relevant meaning for us is that Christmas is like a marriage. God, in a sense, created a bride for himself. and then united himself with that bride, just like a husband and wife does, in love and intimacy and fruitfulness. God initiated his love for his bride, and the bride responds back. So God empties himself, like he pours his love. First of all, he creates a bride, something that can receive his love. That's us, that's all creation. Then he pours himself into it. So we, and all his creation, will be infused with his presence. Now, if you saw life like that, you saw the earth like that, you saw a friend like that, a child, a spouse, how would that influence how you relate to them? It'd make all the difference in the world. That's why we're saying here today that Christmas is the answer to all of life's questions, because it's not just about a single feast day or a holiday. It's about an entire orientation to all of life, how we see everything and everybody all the time. I get a kick out of people ask me on December 26th, well, how was your Christmas? I always say, oh, it's going very well. See, I speak back in the present tense. Actually, we should ask each other, say like, I don't know, July 24th, 24th or something. How's your Christmas going? And we should say, oh, it's going very well. Because it's not a singular event. Yeah, it was an event that's ongoing. It's changed the world, it's changed our lives. And we need to be Christmas conscious constantly, in every moment, every place. And then, of course, we have the Nativity of the Lord, Christmas, meaning the birth of Christ. Now, in this icon, so many answers are woven in this. That's the thing about iconography. It's like theology and color. It points to the highest realities. It's very, very purposeful. Every color, every bit of the composition. We can spend a lot of time on this. And if we meditated on this, this is where we'd start having our answers. For example, look at everything that's in here. Or look at them in a manger scene. What's in a manger scene? What's in this scene? You see cave, rocks, earth, plants, animals, human beings. You see water. You see angels. You see a star. You see the heavens. Notice what I just described? I described everything in the universe, everything that's created. From heaven to a rock and a blade of grass on earth. That's significant. It's purposeful. Not just because it's a pretty scene. It's purposeful because this icon is saying that God infused himself into every dimension of creation, and all creation rejoices. Jesus even said, even if people didn't sing my praises, the rocks and trees would sing it, just by their nature, by what they are. They glorify God by what they are. And once we study nature, we're fascinated by it. We see how that nature reveals God, the ingeniousness of it, the design of it all. It just shouts God's presence. Now, also we see that the composition in this icon, if you look at it, you kind of squint your eyes a bit. Composition is very purposeful in church art, especially in iconography. Again, it's always teaching us something, drawing us into its mystery. Here, we see that there's a kind of a horizontal composition. The angels are across from each other. The Virgin Mary is kind of horizontal. So there's horizontal axis, horizontal movement of your eye in this picture plane. But then slashing through that is a vertical axis. See the star from Bethlehem, the star in the sky, lines up with the Virgin Mary and goes all the way down here. So you see, actually, where your eye is seeing, your eye is kind of moving through this icon in the form of a cross. Why is that significant? Once again, the real meaning of Christmas. That God came on earth, took on our nature, so that he could eventually deify us, save us. And how would he save us? By dying on the cross and rising. Once again, this incredible act of condescension of God's self-emptying, his humiliation, his humility for us. And there it is, hinted at in the composition of this icon. But there's something else. In the very center, you see darkness. Jesus is in a cave. The darkness represents the darkness of the world, the sin of the world. That's why God had to come into the world, incarnate himself, so he could save the world, because no human being could. It had to be something greater than us. So it was God himself would take on our flesh, our nature, while still remaining God. And we come into this world of sin, he would be the light in there. See Christ there in the center, the bright light in the darkness? Now this also hints at his resurrection. He would be placed in a cave, in a tomb, for 3 days. On the third day he would arise and save us and exalt our nature and enthrone him at the very throne of heaven with himself. You know, his love just goes on and on and on. This is the unfolding, the continual unfolding of the Christmas event, the great mystery. In fact, if you look closely at the icon, there Jesus is wrapped in swaddling clothes. But look again, those swaddling clothes are actually almost like a mummy. They're like burial wrappings. Again, hinting at the fact that he would die, be buried, and rise from the grave. And in fact, one more hint. Does that look like a manger? Well, maybe. You know, a manger is a feeding trough for cows. That's what a manger is. Well, looks a little bit like that. However, looks more like a sarcophagus, like a tomb. Once again, here is the nativity scene, you know, the beautiful scene of the newborn baby that we love and sing about. Yet, what's in there simultaneously, ingeniously woven into that same scene of a baby? The hint at the why this baby came here. Not just to be a sentimental baby, a sentimental event for us on Christmas, but he came to become fully human so he could take on our nature and save it on the cross and raise it up through his resurrection and ascension. Now we're going to look at the Virgin Mary. The Virgin Mary, she is the most prominent figure here. Isn't it interesting? Iconography goes by whoever's prominent gets to be bigger. Jesus, of course, in the center. But the Virgin Mary is a very prominent place. And what she's doing is she's looking outward. If you notice, she's looking outward. She's contemplating the mystery of what has just happened here. Imagine, she's a young maiden, a young girl in her teens. And in her very body was contained the uncontainable God. Just imagine that. So she's contemplating this mystery. So she's looking away. And in looking away, what she's doing is almost like stepping aside and allowing our gaze to go to Christ. Because the Virgin Mary's role is always one of drawing us to Jesus Christ. So she sort of looks away, almost as if to allow our view to go right directly to Christ. And what she's wearing, the red, has some certain symbols to it. It symbolizes her purity and her royalty from the house of David. And also, the red is an earth color. And Jesus Christ was God. He was divine, in divine nature, but yet he would take on our human nature through her. So she wears red, signifying like clay, like the earth, that God would take on his humanity, his human nature from her. On her clothes are 3 stars, representing the fact that she remained a virgin before, during, and after the birth of Christ. And as she contemplates the mystery, she's also accepting that mystery. And what do we see in her? We see in her our own faith journey. There's a lot of things we don't understand about God, a lot of things we don't understand about life. Yet we accept, or we should accept, God's wisdom. We should not be afraid. We should accept his faith in God. And she models that for us. This was a great mystery for her. She could hardly understand it. Remember when the angel came to her first, she resisted. Oh, how can this be? I know not man. I'm not Mary. What do you mean I'm going to have the Messiah in my womb? So she was scared. She resisted, just like you and me. But at the same time, there's a resignation. Always those two seemingly opposite or complementary realities, which is another very significant aspect of this Christmas event, the incarnation. The vision we get from the incarnation, even by the fact that we've got heaven and earth, we've got a certain doubt or mystery, yet an acceptance all at the same time. We've got a baby, yet at the same time symbols of death and resurrection. What the icon gives us and what the Christmas event, the great mystery, gives us is a very important way to look at life. I call it living in the both and, living in mystery. That's how we're balanced. See, unfortunately, in our modern day world, and this has been happening for quite a few centuries progressively, we live essentially bipolar. Last time I looked, that was a mental disorder. You notice? We live in dualisms. We separate spirit from matter, body from soul, nature from person, freedom from truth. It's Democrat versus Republican, liberal versus conservative, man versus woman, winner versus loser. And the most frightful bipolar dichotomy of all in my area, the Chicago area, are you a Cubs fan or a White Sox fan? This is neurotic living. Ever notice on the news, when they bring up a news item, especially these talk shows, they introduce the story, right, the theme, and they have somebody talk about it, and then they always say, and then for the opposing view, why is it always like tick-tock, this view versus that view? Bipolar. Isn't there some other way to arrive at the answers that's not so schizophrenic? Well, we have the answer right here. Because the whole Christmas event was the both and. It was heaven uniting with earth. It was the divine, the spirit, uniting with the material, with nature. And where do we draw the line between the two? We don't know. They're two different entities, just like as human beings. We're body and soul. But where do we draw the line between the soul and the body? Can you point your body versus your soul? No. Can you live with one and not the other? No. They're different entities, but yet they exist as one. And we live where those two things converge. We live in the confluence of complementarity. Human beings are not just men or women, they're man and woman, distinct yet one. Marriage is two distinct people, yet they're one. Where do you draw the line between their distinctiveness and their oneness? Where do you draw that line? There is no line. We live in the center where the two coexist. And this is why we can take this mystery of the redemption, the real Christmas, which is really a vision, a blueprint for life, the mystery of life. We can take this both and to every issue, every question of life. This is why I say Christmas is the answer to all of life's questions. Because Christmas is about this reality of the invisible made visible, this living in the both and, this great mystery. Yes, that happens starting with the baby. But it's not just a singular day with a baby and Christmas cards and gifts and getting together, having a lot of food, and then being depressed on December 26th when it's all over. It's not what it's about. It's about living in the both and in mystery. You know, there's a great Catholic thinker and writer, G.K. Chesterton, who said, mystery is what keeps us sane. Human beings go insane without mystery. He says the person who's insane didn't lose their reason. They lost everything except their reason. In other words, they lost imagination. They lost a sense of mystery. So they eventually go mad. We think we can figure everything out in our heads. We've got all the answers, and the answer is either this way or that way. And it's wrong. The answer is living in mystery, where two things can be complementary and exist simultaneously. We live right in that center. We take that to any issue. Let's take the economy. You notice how we can't come up with an answer to anything today? Nothing really is working that great. I mean, we have flashes of brilliance. We're making some improvements here and there, but let's face it. We're always complaining about the economy. We're always complaining about the environment. We're always complaining about all these different political issues, immigration. So we're always complaining. Education system, marriage and family, So many things are not working right. Why? Because we approach them like this. We don't approach them through the Christmas vision, the real Christmas vision, the incarnational vision. So we'll go back to the economy. You hear this saying, oh, you can give somebody a fish, or you can teach them how to fish. Tick-tock, bipolar. No, the answer is teach someone to fish and give them a fish. You can't teach someone how to do something when they're starving. You got to give them a fish, then you can teach them how to fish. But see, you never hear that, do you? So we don't come up with a good economy. At least it never seems to be good. Sometimes we say it is, but then it turns into a bubble and it blows up. And it's no good again. How about the immigration policy? It's about borders or not borders. A wall or no wall. You notice? Let them all come in or don't let anybody come in. What would be the answer? The answer, go to Christmas. Go to Christmas vision. What is immigration about? It's about human persons. Stop right there. Don't go into policies, Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative. Start with the human person. What is the human person? What are we made of? What's the why behind us? How do we treat human persons? Human persons are individuals and, see there's the both and again, and they're part of a community, which means you have to consider both. It can't just be a community, those people, nor can it just be individuals. Individuals need to be treated with respect and dignity, but they also need to be treated as part of a whole, of a community. Now, I'm not giving the specific answers in terms of policies. What I'm giving is the way to approach these things. That's what's missing, because we don't understand Christmas. That's right. That's the problem. We don't understand Christmas. Understand Christmas is the great mystery, the union of the invisible and the visible, living in the both and. Then you can approach every issue and you'll get it right. It'll turn to gold. If not, we'll continue to be bipolar and neurotic, and nothing will really go quite right. Let's go back to our icon for a few other aspects that teach us things. Look at Joseph over here. You notice Joseph is kind of in the periphery of the picture here. The stars of the show are Virgin Mary and the baby Jesus, right? Well, why is Joseph out there? Well, a lot of men could probably relate to that, because manhood is made by God to kind of live on the periphery, on the harder part of life. Joseph was out there defending and protecting the family. Remember in the scripture how many times he was told by the angel, get up, take the child and the family, they're in danger. So he does. Then they come again, another message he gets again, Joseph, take the family again, Jesus is in danger again. He's always getting the bad news, the harder side of life. That's what dad is made to deal with. That's why sometimes people don't understand dad. They don't understand manhood or real fatherhood. But there you see Joseph tending to his fatherhood. He's looking out after the family. He's on the periphery, like the first line of defense. Men are like the fortress that surrounds the life within. Women are like the life within. There's Mary, the Virgin Mary, within the picture in the center. There's the man, Joseph, on the periphery, where men are to be, defending, protecting, looking at the enemy coming over the hill, mourning the family, figuring out problems. So he's trying to figure it all out. He's sitting there, he's actually being tempted by someone who looks like a shepherd. It's actually the devil in disguise, tempting Joseph to doubt the virgin birth. Being a righteous man, he doesn't. He accepts, like any great man does, God's will, no matter how hard it is. And he follows God's will and protects his family and leads them to where they're supposed to go. There's so much more to this icon, so much more to the Christmas mystery. The important thing to remember that it is just that, a mystery. The invisible made visible. It's the way to see all of life through that vision.